Hey everyone, welcome back to Jim's Movie Musings. It's been a while. Now, true to my promise to champion little scene movies, I'm going to spend this review talking about a 2017 movie that came out in theaters some time ago, was largely ignored, and which is now available on Netflix. I'm talking about the Filipino murder mystery thriller Smaller and Smaller Circles, directed by Raya Martin and based on the novel by F.H. Batacan. It's the story of two priests, Father Gus Science, played by Nonie Buencamino, and Father Jerome Lucero, played by Sid Lucero, who have to use their skill in forensic science to track down a brutal serial killer who appears to be targeting young boys who live in the squalor of Payatas in Quezon City, and who doesn't just kill his victims but brutally mutilates them by cutting off their faces, cutting out their hearts, and cutting off their genitals. So, Father Gus and Father Jerome are in a race against time because the killer has already claimed 6 victims by the time the film starts. And they face more than one obstacle: the fact that they work out of a lab that requires unfunding, and the fact that they work with the NBI, the National Bureau of Investigation, which, while it's cooperative with them for the most part, is a flawed bureaucracy, because as soon as their biggest advocate in the NBI, Director Francis Lastimosa, played by another Filipino acting veteran, Bembol Rojo, is sidelined, his replacement, played by Christopher De Leon, decides to take shortcuts. So basically, between the corruption in the government, between the corruption in the church, that at one point actually threatens the funding for their lab, Father Jerome and Father Gus face an uphill battle to catch the killer, to even figure out who he is. They may or may not get help from their friend in the media, a reporter named Joanne Bonifacio, played by Carla Humphreys, but it's challenging just the same. Okay, the film is marketed as a thriller, it's a murder mystery, but really the meat and potatoes of this it's mainly a commentary on corruption in both the church and in the law enforcement division of the Filipino government. And that's not a bad thing. Okay. I like that the English dialogue is quite seamlessly interwoven with the Filipino dialogue. It's not something you often see in Filipino movies, and I've seen enough of them to know that this is done fairly often and it doesn't always work. Well, it works well here. Okay, you have a very proficient acting all around by the leads all around. There's very little overacting, which I really appreciated about this film. Okay, which it happens far too often in Filipino movies, even some of the better ones, I regret to say. But the acting here is very nicely nuanced, and when the characters do raise their voices, it's because they have good reason to. There's some dialogue that doesn't exactly work because we Filipinos are notoriously passive-aggressive, so there are quite a few scenes of confrontation between Father Gus and, like, for example, the benefactor of his laboratory who supports a corrupt priest that he wanted prosecuted. There are confrontations between Father Gus and a similarly corrupt cardinal played by another Filipino veteran, a Filipino acting veteran, Ricky Davao. There are dialogue exchanges that in real life would probably be way more passive-aggressive than they are in the movie, which are basically just direct confrontation. But other than that, I was a big fan of how the script played out, but okay, another bit of weakness of this film is the fact that, again, to go back to the central problem here, the movie is supposed to be a murder mystery thriller, but because the focus is so firmly on the corruption that Father Gus and Father Jerome must battle, the murder mystery thriller aspect gets effectively sidelined, for much of the movie. Sure, at some point they pick up, and there are a lot of narrative elements that are missing, that should make this, that if they were present, would make this a much more effective thriller. Like, we never see the film through the eyes of the victim. I mean, I know this is so often used that it can become a trope, but there's a reason why it's used. It helps generate tension, which is sorely lacking from this movie. Okay, we get to see the killer very briefly in the beginning. There's a few red herrings as to who the killer might be, and it's only maybe like in the third act that we finally get a glimpse of what the killer even actually looks like. But notably, for almost the entirety of the running time, we never see the victim. We never see the film through the eyes of any of the killer's victims. So there is a deficiency in urgency. The sense of urgency that should make this a thriller is really lacking. All of that notwithstanding, this film has really exceptional production quality. It's highly proficient. I mean, one aspect that I'd like to point out is Father Gus's makeshift lab, his forensic laboratory in which he examines cadavers. The cadavers, okay, these are really quality bits of prosthetic work, and not the kind you would see in a half-baked movie. And I've seen plenty of half-baked Filipino movies. This is some really convincing stuff. So you can tell that the filmmakers went the extra mile here, to create a sense of authenticity, and that's worth noting. Okay, that said, even though this is a strong first effort, it still misses the mark. I mean, kudos to them. They dodge a lot of the really obnoxious cliches in Filipino movies. I'm really glad for that. But yeah, this is a movie that could have been way stronger with a tighter script. I mean, and a more balanced sort of storytelling, instead of this preoccupation with corruption, which, while not a bad thing, effectively consumed too much of the story. Okay, so how would I rate this movie? Well, okay, let me be clear. Whatever my score is, I still recommend that you check it out. Okay, whether or not you followed or read the book, I still think this is an example of Filipino cinema that was worth checking out and supporting. Okay, that said, I give this a 6.5 out of 10. It is a technically proficient film. I enjoyed the performances almost all around, but there, it leaves quite a bit to be desired in the narrative department. Still, Filipino filmmakers do not make murder mystery thrillers. So the fact that this first attempt came across so strongly, I think that's an achievement in and of itself. Okay, so yeah, it may be a 6.5 out of 10, but it's still worth checking out, so I highly suggest you do. Okay, and that's it for this review. Okay, you know the drill. If you like what you see, please give me a like and a subscribe. Thanks for watching.